Hey folks, welcome to World Paints Gaming again. Today we'll be reviewing the game Castles of Tuscany by Stefan Feld. The game has been out for a month or a couple of months now, but first of all, I've been waiting to review this game for quite a while because I'm a huge fan of Castles of Burgundy. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But also because I've had this copy for a few months, but I was hoping to get enough plays of it in before I thought it would be appropriate for me to review it. I did play it quite a few times online on Tabletopia, but I did get a few plays of it, two-player version with the physical copy itself recently. So I feel like I'm in a state where I can talk about the game properly with respect to the physical components as well as the gameplay elements itself. It's obviously not been a bad year. If you're a Stefan Feld fan, you have Castles of Tuscany that came out. Bonfire was another one of his major releases for this year. And you, of course, had the big Kickstarter that he did with some of his bigger titles where there was a huge Hamburg and all of those, where there was a huge hue and cry about the cost of some of those games. But we'll stay away from all of those for this one, and we'll focus in on Castles of Tuscany. So let's start by going to the table. We'll do a quick overview of the rules, and then we'll come back and I'll talk about the things that I liked and did not like about the game and my final rating for it. So let's do the table and see how it works. All right, everyone. So welcome to the rules overview for Castles of Tuscany. We will look at the player setup for the example that we will reference. The game can be set up for 2 players, 3 players, 4 players, pretty much the same way. It doesn't really affect anything in terms of understanding how the game works and so on. So let's start by looking at some of the common elements of the playing area. So you have the scoring track. This is primarily the scoring track that's right at the center over here. You will see that there are 2 tracks. There is the green track and the orange color track that goes around. It is an interesting aspect of the game. As you earn points, most of the points will be on the green track, and you will move up on those as the game goes along. The game will be played over 3 larger sets of rounds. Or phases, whatever you want to call it. At the end of each of those, there's going to be an interim scoring. So basically what that means is wherever you are on the green track, you will add the same amount of value on the orange track, and the game will continue. And then, of course, you keep on scoring points mostly on the green track moving forward. And then when the second one is triggered, you will then add wherever you are on the green track to the orange track. So the orange track is basically the cumulative of what your score is for those 3 rounds or 3 phases in question. So keep that in mind as we move along, because that's one of the key differences from Castles of Burgundy, which is the spiritual predecessor to this one, versus this one. Other than that, there are going to be quite a few elements that you will find familiar if you have played Castles of Burgundy before. So this is sort of like your own personal play area. There are individual tiles of your own color that would be laid out over here. This gives you a quick overview of the benefits you would get depending on which tile is laid down in your tableau. Everyone starts off with 3 of these different tiles, which will be set up like this side by side. There are some rules around how these can or cannot be set up. You cannot have tiles that are offset by 2 or more. So this is 2 steps above. You cannot do that. It would have to be something that can be offset by 1 at the most. You will get a starting castle tile that you will start off with, which is double-sided. And once you do that, basically you're pretty much set up on your side to get going. 3 of these stacks will form at the top of your player board. Whenever somebody runs out on one of these, that basically triggers the end of round scoring that we spoke about earlier. So whoever runs out of the first one first, that will trigger the first scoring. Whoever runs out of the second one first, and that could be the same player or a different player, it triggers the second scoring, and then the third one triggers the final scoring of the game itself. Each player also gets a bunch of cards to start off with, and these will correspond to the different colors of the tiles themselves. So keep that in mind. At the start of the game, you get 5, but you will get more as the game sort of like goes along. Here you have the common set of market tiles laid out over here. Whenever you're taking tiles, you will take one from this, put it on your player board, and then in a subsequent action, take it from your player board and put it in the area that you have right over here. But whenever you replenish one of these, you will replenish from the tiles over here, not from the market tiles. The only time these will come into play is when you have 5 or more of the same color tiles over here. So people really have very few choices to make. So then we will sort of like reset and bring out tiles from this one. If that does not happen, it's usually going to be somebody's play color tile that replenishes one of these moving forward. These might be familiar from Castles of Burgundy as well. So whoever is the first to complete all the different hexes of a specific color will get the points on those tiles. Once you get it, you flip it over, and then whoever is the second player to complete it gets the lower amount right after that. So everybody gets 5 cards to start off with. Play area set up with the one castle set up right here. There are some resources in the game as well, and specifically 3 different types. And these are, so this is marbles. These can be used to take another action right away as soon as you're done with your main action. These are sort of like wild hexes. So instead of putting down one of those colored hexes on your turn, if you have one of these, you can put this down, and you can treat this as a hex of any color basically for gameplay purposes. And then this is considered a wild, and we'll talk about what this does as we look at the rules on a turn overview itself. So now that you have the game area set up, and we'll talk about those draw deck as we go through the turn order structure. On your turn, you're basically doing one of 3 different kind of actions. The first action that you can do is you can draw cards from that deck right over there. By default, you will draw 2 cards, as you can see denoted by the symbol over here. So this tells you the benefit of the tiles themselves, and this tells you how much of a certain benefit you will get when you take a certain action. And it will make a little bit more sense as we go through the turn, sort of like a structure as it is. So on your turn, if you're drawing cards from that particular deck, you're basically picking up 2 by default. So 1 and 2, and that pretty much is your turn. It is possible to get upgrade tiles over the course of the game, and upgrade tiles are basically these ones. So if I were to have this on a future turn with me, whenever I do the default action, instead of drawing 2 cards, I'm now drawing 3 at that point. And then so on and so forth if I have more and more of these. So that's the first action that you can do. Basically draw cards from there and put it over there. The second action that you can do on your turn is you can pick up one of these tiles and put it on this particular spot. So I might say, for example, take this one and put it over here, and then this will replenish the one that I just took. This is sort of like your holding area. So if you remember from Castles of Burgundy, there's 3 of these that you have by default on the bottom of the board, but in this particular case, it's a variable number. You start off with 1, but you may have additional ones over the course of the game. So if you had an upgrade that had this right over here, you would get the 2 points on the green track, but what it also means is on a future turn, if you were to get another tile, you have a second space that you can put it down on. So that's there. So that's the second action that you can do. You can pick up a tile from this common area, put it on your player board, and then replenish with one of your tiles, starting with the very left-hand one over there. You cannot do it with the third one before you run out of the first and the second, and so on and so forth. You basically get a sense of how that works. The third action that you can do is taking one of these tiles and then putting it on your play area itself. And the way that will work is to play a particular colored tile, ideally you would need to play 2 cards of that same color. So this, for example, is a blue tile. Let's see if we have any blue tiles ourselves. Right now we don't. This is green, this is not blue. The color is a bit difficult to tell on these, but let's pretend that these 2 are blue cards. So I would basically play these 2, and I can then put this one out on the board itself, but it must go to a spot that's adjacent to a hex that I already have out. So right now I would not be able to play blue anywhere, so maybe instead of doing this, I might do something like this one. So let's say I have this in my staging area, and I can put this one down here like so by playing 2 cards of that specific color. And that would basically be your turn. Now, if you did not have 2 cards of that color, you can do a few substitutions. So first of all, you can use any 2 cards of the same color to act as a wild. So I could use, let's say, for example, 2 of these, which are the same color, to basically act as a green or a blue or whatever other color that I may want to play on that turn as well. The other item that can help you use as a wild card are basically this worker meeples. So if you have these, each one of these can substitute as a card of any specific color that you want. So it's almost like having a wild color card on your turn to do that particular action. So you would basically, as an action, play the cards and put this one down right over here. Now, as soon as you do, you will look at this particular area that you have right over here and see the corresponding benefit of each one of those different colored tiles. And that tells you what you get based on what you place down. So, for example, the one that we just put down here is the one at the very bottom. What this tells you is you will draw 1 card from that deck right over there. So let's say we do this. What this basically tells us is you would look at it and you can pick up the benefit. So this tells you move up 1 on the orange track. And this would be one of the few ways in which you can move up on the orange track in the middle of the game is basically through these cards. And the second one says just basically draw 1 off the top of the deck and take it in your hand. And then this is basically discarded because you've already used this one. If you were to put down one of the orange tiles, you basically get a worker and you can put it right over here on your playing area. If you were to put down a yellow tile, you draw 3 cards from that deck. Now this 3 is constant. Even if you have this upgrade, this will not modify this one. This only modifies the default draw action that you can do. Putting down a gray tile gets you a marble. So you would take the marble and put it down here like so. As I said earlier, you can spend a marble on your turn to basically do a second action right away. So it helps you sort of like do maybe 2 actions back to back from that point of view. Next up, you have the green tiles like this one. What this will basically do is these green tiles have different, it's hard to tell, I know, images of different industries I don't know what's the right term for it, different kind of agricultural goods on them. You will look at each new type that you're introducing into that specific play area. So for example, this is an area of 3. If I were to put this down here, this obviously is new because this does not exist in that area right before. But on a subsequent turn, if I put another one down, I will look at whether I already had those goods or not. If I didn't, then I will score points for those. And you get 1 point for each new type of good that you're representing in that particular area. Next up, you have the blue tiles, which are these ones. If you put them down, you pick up one of these and put it down in your playing area. And as we had said earlier, these basically act as wild tiles that you can put down on your board on a subsequent turn. Red ones are interesting because these are basically upgrade. These help you get the upgrade tiles right over here. So if you build a red hex right over there, you can pick up any one of these and put it down next to your area. So for example, I could take this one and put it down here. So what this basically means is it now buffs up that particular action that we can do on that turn. So we had a look at 2 of these already. This allows you to draw 1 more card. This allows you to have 1 more storage space. This basically means that you would get more marble whenever you get the marble action. So if I had the second one here, instead of getting 1 marble, I would get 2. This is the worker spot. So instead of getting 1 worker, I would get 2. Again, you get the idea. And then the last one is whenever it's time for you to draw that specific card right over there, instead of drawing 1, which you would do by default, you will now draw 2. So that's there. And then lastly, whenever you put down one of these castle tiles, it's somewhat fairly powerful actually. You can take any one tile from this market area and without having to pay the cost associated with it, you directly put it down on your playing area right over here and then take whatever benefits that automatically come with that. So it's quite powerful because A, you don't need to play the cards. B, you don't need to go through the loop, the hoop of put one down here, wait for a subsequent turn, put it down there. You basically just take it and put it down and take whatever benefit that comes with that. So that would give you a hex, so to speak. So the game will continue in this fashion. You have the 3 actions. The game continues clockwise. It will keep going until somebody runs out of their first stack. Now, before that happens, a few of the things might happen in the first round. Somebody might complete a specific section of the same color. They will score points according to that. So if you complete a section that has only 1 hex of that color, you will get 1 point. 2 hexes will get you 3. And 3 will get you 6. So this green one is in and by itself. So this basically will get you 1 point. These 2 are here together. So these will get you 3 points if you complete them in any of the rounds, basically. These 3 are together. So if you complete them in any of the rounds, you will get 6 points as soon as you do that. So keep that in mind. That's a key way in which you will score points in the interim. So you score points for these. You score points for those for completing the full areas and for any cards that might pop up over the course of a turn. The game will continue until somebody runs out of one of these stacks. So let's say you're taking a tile from the market and to replenish that, we put this one down and then we ran out of this particular stack right over here. As soon as I'm done with my turn, we will go into a scoring phase. We will look at where everybody is on the green track. So let's do a live example. So let's say I was 15 when that scoring took place. So I would automatically move the orange track up to 15. And then in the second round, it will keep on continuing. So at the end of the second round, the position might look something like this. let's say I was at 32. And when we do scoring for the second round, when let's say somebody has run out of the second stack, we will add 32 to the 15 that you have on the orange track, and the orange marker will move in that fashion. So 32 plus 15 is 47, if my maths serves me right. And then the scoring marker will move so. And again, at the end of the third round, your scoring might look something like this. And you will basically add 48, where we are on the green track, to the value that we have right over here. So you would end up with about 95, if I'm not mistaken. So that basically is the game. The game continues in a clockwise fashion with the 3 different scorings that we spoke about. And whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner. Before we wrap up, there are a few things that will count towards your end game score, and I quickly want to mention that before I forget it. Each one of these resources that you have left over will give you 1 point each at the end of the game. So each hex that you have left in your staging area over here that you've not used, and these can be either the wooden ones or these cardboard ones that you might have picked up on one of your turns. So if you've not put them down and you still have it, these are worth 1 point each. Each marble that you have left over is worth a point each, and each worker that you have left over is worth a point each. You may also have a certain number of cards left over at the end of the game, which you've not had the opportunity to play. You will get 1 point for each 3 card that's left over in your hand. So you will add up points for all of those on the orange track. And where you end up is basically a final score for the game. And then, as I mentioned earlier, obviously whoever has the most points wins. So those are pretty much the rules for Castles of Tuscany. Let's go back to the table and I'll share my thoughts on what I think about the game. All right, folks, welcome back to the table. So review time for Castles of Tuscany. And as I said before, this is a review that I've been waiting for a while to make because I did play the game maybe a couple of months back or so for the very first time. But I was really hoping to get a few more playthroughs in at different play accounts, and then B, the first couple of playthroughs that I had were online on Tabletopia, but I really wanted to get plays of the physical copy in before I did the review on this one, which I've been able to do, so I'm really excited about getting into it. So let's crack on. Before I talk about my pros and cons or likes or dislikes about the game itself, I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about the production quality. And for anybody who's familiar with games and that are part of the Aliyah lineup, none of this is going to come as a surprise. The production quality is fairly functional. It works. It does what it's supposed to do. But don't come into it expecting stellar artwork or any sort of stellar components or anything of that sort. That's neither a good or a bad thing. Well, maybe a little bit more the negative than the positive. But at the end of the day, if you're familiar with these line of games, if you've played them and if you do not have an issue with those, then you definitely will not have an issue with what's here. The card quality is decent. The artwork on the card is not bad. Now, a lot of them do repeat because they are the same resource type, but what is there is attractive, and I do like it for the most part. The artwork on the boards themselves, I think, are probably one of the weaker elements of the game, especially these upgrade tiles. Like, it's just basically a bland beige background with just sort of like the artwork of a stone on it, or artwork of a worker on it, or whatever you have on these tiles. The wooden pieces are good. These are nice, big enough, chunky, not too big, not too small, and it's nice that they put in the effort with the worker meeples to make the design a little bit more unique. So that's good. But other than that, I would say that what you get in here is functional and works well and will last through multiple playthroughs that you might get out of the game. So keep that in mind. But again, if you're looking for something that looks very thematic or looks very attractive, visually striking, this game is not it. So let's get that right out of the gate. With that said, generally speaking, before I go into my likes and dislikes, keep in mind that I do already like Castles of Burgundy, so I was coming in with that sort of like as part of my background, and this does share quite a bit of DNA with that game. And with that said, I do like what's in here, right? So it is definitely a game that I feel I can definitely see the similarities as well as where they infuse new interesting aspects into the game, and I do like it for what it does. First of all, I think the game scales quite well. So regardless of whether you're playing with 2 players, 3 or 4, I think the gameplay is going to be sound. The flow is going to be fairly smooth. The only key difference really would be obviously with 3 and 4 players, you're taking a little bit more time because you're only a third or a quarter of the number of players playing in, so that will take a little bit longer. And also some of the actions of the market board might change quite a bit depending on how many players you have by the time it gets back to you. Whereas with a 2-player game, there's a little bit more immediacy because you're going pretty much back and forth at that time. Whereas in this case, somebody else is going to take that turn, and then somebody else, and then somebody else, and then it comes back to you. And what you have available in the market area might change by that point. But so much of the game really is you solving your own puzzle on your player board, on these boards basically that you have in front of you, that it's not a major issue in any way. The game flows quite well. So as we had gone through the turn structure, there is really one of 3 actions that you can do. And even in your first couple of turns, you're going to find that things are going to zip by quite fast. You generally will have a sense of what you want to do. Draw a card, draw 3, draw 2, you're done. Taking a tile from the market tile, just take one and then put one back from your player board, and you're done. Putting down a tile, and that's probably the one where you might have a little bit more time taken on the turn. But again, when I say might have a little bit more, it's really quite relative because you need to put down cards of specific colors. If you don't have them, just use the workers or substitute it with any 2 cards of the same color. Those turns will go by quite fast as well. And then of course, there's a little bit of engine building aspect to the game. As you're putting down those upgrade tokens next to the side of your board, when you take those actions on subsequent turns, they become more and more powerful as it sort of like goes along. So you might be like, I'm going to draw 3 cards instead of 2, or I'm going to draw 4 cards instead of 3 now. Or hey, guess what? I can save or store 3 tiles or 2 tiles instead of just the one that I'm stuck with. Makes you feel really good when you get those upgrades and you can make use out of those. And it's almost a good design choice because, not almost, sorry, rather, let me correct that. It is a good design choice because I feel like the red tiles that you have, that you can put down on your player board, are probably intentionally restricted so that you do not get, nobody gets more and more powerful in a way that they just run away with the game. You only have a max of 3 that you can build on your play area, so you can only ever really get 3 upgrade tiles over the course of a particular game. So you have to be a lot more judicious in terms of what you're choosing. You can't just be like, I'm going to have just more spots for hexes to be put down. You do that, but while that is good, you're still not drawing quite as many cards, which does not really give you that many options when it's time for you to play those cards. You maybe don't get quite as many marbles, or you don't get quite as many workers, and all of those things can add up as well. So each one of the upgrades, most of the upgrades, I should say, feel quite powerful and hefty in their own right, and it is definitely going to be an interesting decision in terms of what you go for. So it does make it feel as if the decisions you're taking on that front are meaningful and relevant. The game feels quite satisfying as you're playing on your turn as well, because usually there is something that's interesting that's happening every couple of turns or so on and so forth. Because you only have different areas that are composed of 1, 2, or 3 hexes of the same color, you might be completing those fairly quickly, definitely a lot more quickly than you would in Castles of Burgundy. Because in Castles of Burgundy, while some you would have those 1 hex spots right there, but a lot of the others might be bigger. You might have 4, 5, or 6 larger areas that you could complete in one go. And while you might enjoy that, you would definitely find this to give you like a constant drip of certain benefits as you move along. Because if it's just 1, 2, or 3, you're completing some of those fairly quickly. You're getting points for those, getting 1 point from here, 2 points from there, and so on. And it really just turns around. It doesn't feel quite point salad-y at any point, although I can see certain cases where you might think that it could. But again, it's a felt game, so if it's a point salad, it is what it is. But never felt detrimental, at least to me, in terms of gameplay. So that's quite there. It's almost like you're gamifying a game. It's a funny way of saying it. So there's a concept called gamification in different industries, where basically you give consumers or clients like a certain stream of benefits, which sort of like keeps them on the hook and keeps them moving forward to get bigger or higher tiers certain things, and there's almost an aspect of that in here, where you're constantly getting points for completing different areas, and before you know it, you might be the first to complete one of these tiles where you've completed all the areas of a particular color, and you pick these up, and then you get points, and then when you have the scoring taking place, you move up on the points track, and then you get points for those, and then second round comes along, and then you move up even further on the scoring track because it's cumulative. It definitely feels spacey, feels like the game is really moving along at a fairly fast clip, and it can be quite satisfying and enjoyable for most, I would say. In terms of gameplay, the game scales quite well. I think we've already covered that. If you enjoy Castles of Burgundy, and if you're looking for something that has that DNA in a game, this is your wish come true, basically. Because there's a lot of elements in here that feel very familiar from Castles of Burgundy, that you can look at the castle tiles, a lot of the different tiles that you have in here. Some are obviously new in terms of the upgrades that you can do, that's new. The points track and the way that this works is new as well. You don't have the same export tiles for Castles of Burgundy, but again, while being two different games, there's definitely aspects of it that are fairly similar, and there's definitely aspects of it that are different between the two. I would almost go as far as to say I think there is room in your shelf for both, especially if you like them, or either one of them enough. If you like Castles of Burgundy enough and you haven't tired of it, it's worthwhile having a look at this, and it's not a bad idea. You know, if you like it enough, it's even worthwhile having both of them together as part of your collection. I certainly do, because I like Castles of Burgundy that much. The Castles of Tuscany and Burgundy, they scratch similar but different itches, and I'm happy to have both of those as part of my collection. Couple of other differences though, and I think it would be good to cover some of the differences as well. Now, Castles of Burgundy had the dice mechanism where you're rolling the different, the two die that you get, the two dice that you get, and that tells you sort of like what actions may or may not be taken on your turn. Of course, you had workers, which could be used to modify that value. Now, you don't have dice in this game, but you are playing with cards. And while this might feel like less luck driven, again, at the end of the day, it depends on the luck of the draw. When you're getting the cards, and you may get certain cards that do exactly what you're looking for right away, or you might have to wait for a while to do that. Now, this has mitigates as well, because you can get these workers, and you can use this as sort of like a wild color card on your turn, or you could use two cards of the same color, put them down, and use it as a wild as well. So there are ways in which both of them have certain elements of luck, and then certain elements of mitigating those. So your mileage will vary depending on whether you're comfortable with the luck that comes with the draw of a card, or if you like the feel of rolling a die and then seeing what comes up and doing actions based on those. So I think that's going to boil down to more a matter of personal preference than anything else. Initially, I thought that this might be less random than Castles of Burgundy, but I think over the few plays that I've had, I find it's not quite as less random as I would have expected. There are definitely turns I've had, or I've been playing with somebody else where others have had, where they keep on drawing in, it's like, yep, not getting what I was looking for, not getting what I was looking for. And yes, they could have used two cards to, play down and take a particular action, but then sometimes it feels expensive to do it a certain way. It's good or bad depending on how you look at it. It means that, you have ways to get out of particular situations. So you have to make the decision in terms of, is it really worth it for you or not? But you might also feel that you want to have a little less of that luck with the cards that you draw. I personally think it's perfectly fine and it's okay. But again, your mileage may vary depending on where you stand on that particular aspect. So keep that in mind. But other than that, the game flows quite fast, quite well. I'm generally quite happy with it. This is a game that I'm going to keep in my collection for a while at least. And I definitely hope to get multiple playthroughs of it. I've played this 2 players the most recently, and I quite enjoyed it. I think this might be my. I would probably prefer this at 2 over 3 and 4. It's probably just me because obviously I play the 2 player with the physical components, and I always prefer playing with the physical components as opposed to playing online. So that might be that bias at work. But I also just found that playing with 3 or 4 players really just adds to the time without necessarily adding to the enjoyment. But again, if you're playing with a group of friends and you can put this to the table, it doesn't matter at that point. So have at it. Yeah, so that's it for me. A good engine building, sort of like aspect, meaty, meaningful decisions, a steady stream of benefits that you're getting that makes you feel like you're making progress pretty much throughout the whole games. You don't really get turns where it feels like you had a dud turn where it's like, well, so I'm just going to do this, and that really doesn't do all that much. Even when you're drawing cards, you might be looking for a particular color. It's interesting as to whether you got it or not. In fact, you will often draw cards, and it's not a bad action because it just opens up the possibilities of all the different things that you can do. And the most fun aspect of it is, of course, putting down the tiles, because you're playing the cards. That's probably the neatest action of the three. You're putting down the tiles, getting the specific benefit of it, and then you're trying to combo up as much as possible. Put down the castle tile, you get to take another one of these and put it down right away. And then, of course, you might get a second benefit from that and allows you to do something else. If you have a marble, you can just use that to take another action back to back that goes with it. Timing in gameplay is critical. In the few games that I've had, in fact, in the one of the 3-player games that I played, I found out that whoever is best able to manage the timing of when the stacks run out on their board are usually going to be better at winning, because if you can finish on a strong note, like if you see that you're leading on the green track and you have the opportunity to end the round then and there, why would you not take it? Because you end it, you don't finish, everybody does not get an equal number of turns. You just make sure the game scores right away at that particular point. And if you know that you're leading, you're definitely going to have most of the points added onto the orange track from the green track at that point. So management of the timing of that might feel lucky to some. It can be mitigated to some extent, but at the same time, there is going to be that minor element of luck as well. I don't think it's a big deal, but if you're somebody who's on the receiving end of it, it might not necessarily feel that way. So keep that in mind. But other than that, there isn't a lot more for me to talk about it. It's a game where I think that the luck element is definitely on the lower end. It's fairly tactical in nature as opposed to overall strategic in nature, I think. And I don't know if I spoke about this earlier or not. There are definitely going to be some tiles in the game where they will be a lot more in demand compared to some of the other tiles. Like everybody wants to have those upgrades on their board. So you will see people rushing to get these red hexes on their board. And if this is available to you when it's your turn, obviously you might want that because it just allows you to do future actions a little bit better, a little bit stronger. But it might, again, be down to the luck of the draw as well, because you might, at the end of your turn, just, you took a tile and then you put one, from your hexes, you put this one out right over there, and it's available for the next player to take right away. Whereas you're like, okay, I would have wanted to take that, but then I don't. And then the 3 stacks that you have on your player board, the distribution of that is fully random. So you might have instances where certain tiles which you really, really need are just stacked at the bottom end, and then you wait forever to get them, and by the time you get them, it's probably taking too long, and so on. There are ways in which you can pivot around and still do other things and get other benefits, but if you're at any stage in the game, if you're set in terms of, I agree, this is the path I'm really going to take, and it's either that or nothing, it could get a bit expensive in a few turns, just so that you're aware. So some tiles are definitely going to be more in demand than the others. Red is one of them. The green, the dark green castle tiles are definitely another one because it's quite potent. As soon as you put them down, you can take another token from the market and put it on your playboard right away and get the benefit from that right away as well. Certain tiles we found were not quite as in demand, such as these light green ones, which have those goods on them, where you get points for that. You will end up putting them down over the course of the game, but it's not going to be the high demand tile in my experience. Whereas the others are going to be somewhere in the middle of the road at that point. These are definitely quite nice and handy, and definitely are come in pretty much fairly similar to the way that it was implemented in Castles of Burgundy. And then these cards, when you do get them, just give you a nice bonus, sort of like as it moves along. But again, you may not be quite as incentivized to get these because you may just want other actions that give you a lot more of those, as it were. But anyway, in a nutshell, and I'll come down to this, my final rating on the game is a solid B+ for me. I think this is definitely a game that scales well. It's a game that you can introduce to new gamers, people who are new to the hobby, people who have probably played Carcassonne and Ticket to Ride and so on, and are looking for the next step to get into something that's heavier and meatier, gamier. This might be a step in the right direction for them. Something that scales well and something that plays well specifically for two players. And something that just generally is smooth. Like there's nothing in this game that I can point at and say that's revolutionary. We did not have this in any other game, and it just changes how Euros now work. There's none of that in here, obviously. But what is there works very, very well. It flows very, very smoothly. Gameplay is fun, engaging. Just the small level of interactivity with the market tiles on in here, but for a lot of the time, you're basically focused on solving your own puzzle in your own play area, and you're trying to optimize that as much as possible, which honestly goes to the very heart of what most people want in a Euro these days. So if you like Euros, if you know that you like Castles of Burgundy and you want something that's similar, or perhaps you haven't played Castles of Burgundy, but you want to sort of like a Euro that's medium weight or medium to just slightly light. I wouldn't necessarily call this light, but medium to light perhaps. If you're looking for something that is engaging, works well with 2, works well at 3 or 4. If you're just a Euro fan in general, I would recommend it, unless you've played Castles of Burgundy and you very specifically do not like Castles of Burgundy. That might be the only situation in which I would say maybe this might not be the game for you. But I think there's enough difference in here even then for it to be worthwhile at least to play. My recommendation would be give the game a play at the very least, if nothing else. And if you already know that you like the Euros, you like Fell's other titles, you specifically like Castles of Burgundy, and you're more than excited about something that's along the same lines, I strongly recommend that you pick up Castles of Tuscany. It's very likely you will not be disappointed. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And in the meanwhile, hope all of you are staying safe, take care, and I'll see you at the next one.